obviously on stay in your lane.
In today's world, we're all busy, right? We're all running 100 miles an hour every day, and you don't oftentimes get the opportunity to just network with people that you've developed relationships with over the years. And so it's things like this where you bring a lot of people together. You spend 2 days, 3 days of intense time together and networking, and you get as much, I think, from these types of conferences just through the networking. I mean, you have to have good content in the presentations, and that's obviously there as well. But I think the networking piece is very, very valuable.
I've spoken to shippers that receive value from getting out of the office and getting into a position to talk to others in their industry, peers, and ask how they're handling things, what they're doing, and really get to connect on that level without the clock and without the day-to-day interruptions, where you can sit here and actually gain knowledge from each other and value and bring value to each other.
Right.
So I think there's that value here. And then from the supplier side or a provider to the conference, there's a value with getting the FaceTime and getting the same communication.
Right.
It's one thing to talk over an email or to talk through LinkedIn or to use a system to communicate. But I think at the end of the day, it's really nice to get to meet people and actually see who's real and who's genuine. And, you get to pick people.
Who's tall, who's short, who's got hair, who doesn't.
Right. Right.
Well, so, I think we all get tired of the Zoom calls, right?
Yeah.
I mean, or you pick whatever it is, Teams,
Teams, Zoom. Yes.
Yeah. And so it is good, like you said, to actually physically be with other people and, have those face-to-face conversations.
Well, definitely. And I'm excited to see how, I think it's got to be fun for you.
Oh, it is.
You're in some respects, you're starting to ride over again. And you've got all of the experience of all the things you've been through. And now you get to bring them to two really nice guys.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
Thomas Moore and Keith.
Yeah.
Keith's a wizard.
Good people. Oh, yeah.
And if you talk to him,
smart as a whip.
Yeah. If you talk to him, he says, "Oh, I'm an engineer. I'm not." I was working for SpaceX. And you're like, "Really?"
Right.
I mean,
He'll start a call sometimes and say, "I'm not the smartest person in this call. These guys are." And I said, "Keith, you're lying. You are the smartest guy in this call."
Yeah, and you pick up on it. And it's like, okay, he has 6 AI patents, and he hasn't written anything in 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay. You've ruined the curve for everybody you've hung out with in school until this point in time in your life. And I love the humble approach, but it really, they're really genuinely great people.
Oh, they are. They're a joy to work with. They really are.
Jeff, I know that you're not involved in the TMS side of the business anymore, but have you what's your view of, like, I'll go back to AI and the TMS products now. Are they being integrated in? Are they, I guess I'm trying to think, what's the status of AI in the TMS? No, from your view, I know you're not in the day-to-day anymore.
Yeah. No, I think the TMS companies are starting to look at AI as well. We were talking earlier about shipper of choice. There's a lot of metrics now out there as it relates to, almost every place a carrier, as an example, can pick up or deliver, in North America. And all you got to do is look at the Google rating of that particular site, how many stars they have and all the comments from the drivers. And so, I think that kind of information now is starting to, be captured in such a way where you can be much more sophisticated in terms of, well, what should be the price to go pick up at this location? On average, how long is the dwell time going to be at that particular location? And then how does that incorporate into the rate? So I think those are kind of the areas where AI, over the next decade should drive a lot of value. And I think it will start to, kind of raise the bar for shippers and receivers as well, to say, hey, how do we make sure our scores are good at our locations where we're going into and out of?
Well, I think that you bring up a great point. Um, in my side of the industry, for example, you know, when we're repping and presenting loads to carriers, right, that are new loads, new shipments, they're automatically, if they're bright, they're automatically seeing where they're going into or where they're being asked to go into.
Right.
And I can tell you, from the past few years, we've got some shippers, the two shippers that ship in, the same shipment basically to two different receivers in the same town, and it's a $500 to $800 difference depending on the market
Right.
to go to the non-desirable one.
Right.
So how do then you could also go from the same shipper to two different locations, and you're filling out an RFP, and you say, no, 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 I know this. I know this receiver. This one's going to be expensive for us.
Right.
So we have to price it accordingly. Right.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you go back and say, which is more important? The shipper, waiting at the shipper, or waiting at the receiver? It comes down to, which is more important, on time pickup or on time delivery? The proper answer in our industry is yes.
Yeah. Exactly.
Both.
Yes.
There's not one that's more than the
Right.
other.
Right.
But then if every shipper you talk to, if you say, hey, do you want me to be 15 minutes or an hour late on picking up or delivering? Right? Because things happen. Which one?
Right.
And they're going to say, well, be on time to the receiver. You're getting chargebacks. The unloading game has this has become more and more difficult and more volatile. You've got 3-day windows at some of the receivers, and when you get the PO through the TMS, the first 2 days are already booked. And if the third day is not an option, then you've missed it, and
Right.
it's the chargeback scenario
Right.
already.
Right. Yeah.
So, how do we use AI to bring value in that market, to understand, how do we do that? Is AI going to be something that is going to help us force maybe people in our industry to change the way they're operating? I don't know that I see that yet, but I think it would be nice if we could bring that value to everyone, because let's be realistic, everyone's sitting in their own house. They can't see what's happening inside
Right.
the neighbor's
Right.
home.
Right. And the systems aren't connected to each other.
The systems aren't connected,
Right.
but they're both in the same industry.
Yeah.
So how do we get that balance? Is it coming in the next 5 to 10 years? Is technology going to force it or help us?
Yeah. I think the technology will definitely, to a certain extent, help us, but also, force it in to some degree. Because that example I used earlier, you can, open up Google Maps today and pick out any address of any distribution center or any manufacturing plant in the country,
And see what you're getting into.
and see what you're getting into, right? That data is out there and it's not going away. And so I think, that kind of information is being used for, the smart people in supply chain logistics in terms of how they price and that type of thing. And I think over time that will start to drive more and more evolutions of technology that can help, address these types of
So
things.
you see like AI feeding that information from Google Maps and Google right into a TMS with the times, the ratings and all that. It's just another data point that goes in there.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And, and on our side, or where we're trying to orchestrate what goes on in the warehouse, we look at that and say, okay, we track dwell time for every physical asset, in the yard, whether it's a drop trailer or it's a live load. And then we say, okay, this particular shipper receiver has so much free time before they start getting charged for detention. And so how do you make sure you're trying to sequence all those inbounds and outbounds in such a way where you're, part of what you're solving for is how do I minimize detention, right? It's not only just how do I optimize labor inside the building, but then also how do I minimize detention? And there's trade-offs, right? And so
The priorities are going to become pretty clear.
Yeah, so every shipper receiver has to evaluate, how important is labor productivity inside the building in relationship to,
On-time
minimizing detention of the assets that are out in the yard waiting to get loaded or unloaded. And so that becomes part of that constraint variables that you're optimizing for when you're doing the optimization.
So when everyone's optimizing their facilities and it doesn't line up together, what do we do then? They've optimized it for their facility and you're selling to them.
Right.
And you've optimized it for your facility that you're manufacturing and shipping out of.
Right.
And when the two don't line up,
that's when you got to have that difficult conversation.
The people.
Right.
With the receiver and, come to an agreement. I mean, you want, like I think Jeff said before, you want to make it a win-win.
Right.
Ideally.
Yeah.
You just don't want winners out there. You want to make sure,
Yeah. And that's where, your question earlier about, if you're coming out of Michigan State or some logistics school today, do you embrace AI? And I would say yes, because of exactly that. There's still problems to solve, right? So you've solved it, this piece of it, but, now we still have these disconnected supply chains all over the place.
They're two silos then again.
Yeah.
That you got to break down.
Yeah, exactly. So how do you solve for that? And that's where your smart logistics people can help,
right?
Wade through those waters and figure that out.
Navigate that.
Yeah.
Yep. Which usually means there's going to be either one side's going to do all the bending, right? Or they're both going to bend a little and meet in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wonderful. Wow. Well, I think you're a great guy, great value to the industry. And I think that the people that you're working with are phenomenal. And I wish you the best.
Thank you.
And I hope that the conference has been good so far. It seems like every time you go 10 feet, someone stops you.
Yeah, I know. It's great.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, looking forward to the next couple of days. Should be fun.
Good. Well, thank you for being on.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you, Joe.
Good seeing you again.
Thank you, John. Yeah, likewise. Yeah.
And until
Appreciate
then,
it.
stay in your lane.
All right.